Hello everyone. Short video on how I've created online content for the class that I've had. So I'll be talking about these three things here. First, about how to create an online video, upload it to YouTube. I'll talk a little bit about how I've allowed students to ask questions online, see each other's questions, vote on them, and thus sort of facilitating and helping you to get an overview of what questions are really important now that you might not be able to answer all of them. And I'll say a little bit about how I've created some interactive Zoom sessions. I've also written about this on a short Twitter thread for those that just want to get the ultra short version of this. And note, by the way, I've had 550 students in my class, so of course it's different if you only have 30 or 40. I'm taking departure in this larger setting. I've created multiple short videos, about 10-12 minutes. This allows flexibility for the students, and it's easier for me to produce. I don't have to focus and concentrate on half an hour or 45-minute session. And I use the free version of Screencast-O-Matic for that. It should be fairly easy to install. It actually has a maximum of 15 minutes, which is useful for me because it forces these shorter videos. And if you want to talk for 60, well, it's easy to just divide it up into 4 segments. And again, it just mentally has turned out to be quite a bit easier. There are lots of other software options out there, PowerPoint, where you can record, or you can use Zoom, and so it's not that Screencast is necessarily the only or the absolute best one out there, but it's been more than good enough whatever I've had to do. Just to get you a sense of how it works, this is the screen that I would be looking at just before I click the record button. I can sort of set how big a screen size I want to capture. I press the record button shortly after it gets going. I've decided to show my picture, as you can see, in one of the corners. Notice you can always click pause when it's running. So if you're sort of running out of mental capacity, you don't really know, or you're about to stumble upon something, just click pause, wait a little bit, and get going again. It will sort of make your head tilt somehow. It might make your head tilt somehow, but students don't really care. Don't worry too much about the aesthetics. As you can see, I mean, the webcam quality and my whole setup is not particularly fancy. It's not my impression that students really care about this. I also talk just like I do in the classroom. It's not perfect. I might stumble upon some words and say or whatever. You do whatever you are in the classroom. It doesn't have to be perfect, but since I do these fairly short videos, I do think I can sort of make a very clear and important point and structure it quite nicely. And I now have, I think I created 10 or 12 videos, and I would say at least 6, 7, 8 of them are videos that I really want to use next year because they actually turned out to be quite good. I then upload videos to YouTube. You can upload them to Blackboard or other places. I actually like YouTube because I did about 10 videos. This makes it very easy for the students to have an overview of all the videos produced. YouTube even recommends my videos to them when they're done watching one of them. So it's easier for them to navigate. And I have information on the number of views, which days. I could sort of follow the number of views there were during the exam period, especially the day before the exam. Funny enough, there were a lot of views. And I did generate 6,000 views with these 10 videos and 550 students, so it seemed like they were quite active in watching these. If you want to, you can go to one of the examples that I've linked to just below. Okay, that was briefly on online videos. I've also have a setup on receiving questions from students, and I realized that many of us are getting quite a lot of questions, and they can be difficult to handle, also because some of them are the same. I've already, early on, before this whole Corona situation, had an online tool that I use for this. You've all heard me talk about Poll Everywhere. So I have basically a link that I use all the time where students can go to and ask a question, and they can vote on each other's questions. And that means that I have a good impression of what's really important for them. And whether it's the reference list or whether it's epistemology or whatever the topic they're struggling with, I have a sense of it. You can use Poll Everywhere for this, but you can also use Mentimeter. I have a picture on the next slide on how that looks like. It's a Q&A option, and students will then be able to ask questions and vote on each other's questions. So again, it's a quick and efficient way for you to get an overview of what's going on with my students. What are they worried about? I then either, if it's really a popular question with plus 50 votes, I create a video to answer it, Otherwise, I have a Google Doc that I then copy-paste the question into and answer it. I'm the only one that can edit it. So it's also a fairly efficient way of getting a lot of information out there without spamming them with emails. And that's the next step I'll get to. I can also then answer questions in an interactive Zoom session. Here we just have the Mentimeter set up. So there's something called Q&A, and this is how it looks like for the student's point of view. So they can ask questions and they can vote on them, and they can sort of either see the last questions or the top questions, the most popular one. So Mentimeter does have that option. Okay. Third thing that I want to emphasize is then how I do this interactive Zoom session. We have as a default the option of having 300 participants at once, but we can actually increase that to 500. It's not too difficult. You can reach out to EduIT. If you want to, you can send me a question an email about it as well, but that is possible. It's also my impression that students hardly need any instructions. I've sent them a link. I've informed them about the setup, but I don't have to tell them how to install this. If you use Google Chrome, it doesn't need an installation. And it's very intuitive and straightforward for them. We have a link down here that we log on to via the Vive code, so it's also quite easy to set up. As you can see, I just paused the video. It's quite effective to do it like that. I have here in the slide set, I have a couple of notes, but I actually want to go to the Zoom website just to show you how I then schedule a session and what sort of buttons I click and how I set it up. So let me just wait with getting back to the slides and showing you how that looks. So this is the Zoom site that we are at here. If you click on meetings up here, you can't see the entire screen, I know, but there is a button called meetings. I can then schedule a meeting. I can click on that. I can call it something. I can schedule it for a specific point of time, for instance, tomorrow at 2 o'clock, set the duration. I can make sure that my video is on, but the videos of participants is off. I can mute their microphone upon their entry. And I can record the meeting automatically on my computer, which will then enable me to upload either a video or audio file of the session afterwards, again, meaning that the students don't have to be present all the time. I also want to show you how we then host a meeting. It's simply clicking how that looks like. So I click on that button. I am asked to open the session, which is then just about to do now. That's how an empty Zoom room then looks like. Here is a chat function that is very useful because students can write in this chat function and then ask questions and everyone can see them. You can also, if you go down here to more and click manage participants, you can then have an overview of all the participants that are in here. And from the student's point of view, I'll show it in the slide in just a second, they can raise their hand. So to sort of indicate, now I want to say something, and you can say, Peter, it's now your turn, you have a question. They can unmute their mic, say something, and stuff gets going. It's really my impression, and these are 6th semester bachelor students. This is something that they are quite good at figuring out. Okay, so we are back in the PowerPoint. As I said, quite useful to let them ask questions, especially in big classes. I might receive 20, 30 questions in a 1-hour Zoom session. I only do it for an hour and a half because it's quite intensive. This was the virtual hand raising that I mentioned. From the student's point of view, they can raise their hand and you'll then be able to see up here who has raised their hand and who sort of wants to be the next one to talk. You can also, and I didn't show that while I was in the video, I should have done that. You can share the screen. There is at the bottom or at the top, there is simply a button that says share screen, and then you can decide to share a particular screen. Don't worry about sort of accidentally jumping back and forth. It's logged onto the particular screen you're then sharing. And again, in these large classes, I then pick a question that I've asked in the chat. I copy paste it into a screen I'm sharing, for instance, a PowerPoint or Word document. And then so the students can see what question I'm answering. It makes it easier for them to follow. I then even add a timestamp because when I then upload this document and the audio file, students would be able to afterwards to go into this file and don't have to listen to the entire thing again. They can go to a particular point in time where they get an answer to exactly the question they want to. Of course, up to you how you want to do this. So this is, again, just to show how the Zoom picture looks like. I schedule a meeting, but you can also just start a meeting right away up and host a meeting. But it's just easier to schedule than you know the link. And I just send out the link to the URL that it's being generated to the students. and it's not sort of open before you then log on. It's not something that they can go into before. And this is then how it looks like. A picture I also just showed before, how the chat is going to look like, and what they can write into. So that was basically what I want to say. Very brief and to the point indication of how I decided to handle this. I know I had the advantage, so to speak, that students had an exam this Saturday, so they were really eager on learning, but at least in that setting, it really turned out very useful and very effective. And based on the exams I read so far, also that they actually learned stuff.